सन् 1941 मा भारतको सिलोङ आसाममा जन्मनुभएका प्राध्यापक आलन मैकफार्लन बेलायतको ड्रागन स्कुल, सेड पेरग स्कुल, अक्सफोर्ड विश्वविद्यालय तथा लन्डन विश्वविद्यालयबाट उहाँले शिक्षा हासिल गर्नुभएको छ। उहाँले 2वटा स्नातकोत्तर तथा 2वटा विद्यावारिधि हासिल गर्नुभएको छ। उहाँले अक्सफोर्ड विश्वविद्यालयबाट इतिहासमा र लन्डन विश्वविद्यालयबाट मानव शास्त्रमा विद्यावारिधि गर्नुभएको हो। मानव शास्त्रमा विद्यावारिधि गर्न उहाँ सन् 1968 देखि 70 सम्म नेपालको कास्कीको थाक गुरुङ गाउँमा 15 महिना बिताउनु भएको थियो। उहाँ लगातार गुरुङका बारेमा सबैभन्दा लामो समयसम्म 50 वर्ष त उहाँले मनाइसक्नु भयो। नेपाल आएको 50 वर्षसम्म अनुसन्धान गरिरहनु हुने अध्ययनकर्तामा पर्नुहुन्छ र उहाँको श्रीमती सारा हैरिसनले 50 वर्षमा 19 पटक नेपाल भ्रमण गरिसक्नु भएको छ। उहाँको मानव शास्त्रमा विद्यावारिधिको स्रोतहरू र जनसङ्ख्या नेपालका गुरुङहरूका बारेमा एक अध्ययन रहेको छ। सन् 1978 मा प्रकाशित इंग्लिश व्यक्तिवादको उत्पत्ति, सन् 2005 मा प्रकाशित लिलीहरूलाई पत्र संसार कसरी चल्छ, लेटर्स टु लिली हाउ द वर्ल्ड वर्क्स, जुन मैले र डाक्टर टेकले नेपालीमा पनि अनुवाद गरेका छौं केही अंशहरू र त्यो अर्को भाग अनुवाद गर्ने क्रममा छ। जस्ता 40 भन्दा बढी पुस्तकहरू लेखिसक्नु भएको छ भने उहाँको लेखाइ अझ जारी छ, जुन इंग्ल्यान्ड, नेपाल, जापान र चीन उहाँको अनुसन्धानका क्षेत्रहरू हुन्। सन् 1986 देखि उहाँ बेलायती प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठानको प्राज्ञको रूपमा चयन हुनुभई कार्यरत हुनुहुन्छ भने क्याम्ब्रिज विश्वविद्यालयको सन् 2009 मा सेवानिवृत्त पश्चात प्रोफेसर एमेरिटस तथा सोही विश्वविद्यालयको किङ्स कलेजको आजीवन सदस्य पनि हुनुहुन्छ। Now I would like to welcome our Agi, giving this floor. Like other speakers, you also have 20 minutes for your presentation. Agi, I'll indicate the time when 3 minutes and 1 minute is left to wrap up your talk. Over to you, Agi. The floor is yours.
Namaste. Beli ki beli saban mua nga saban mu nga kibtai nga miamro nga naati sale nga tinaga saban mu neve nga presho sera debi saban mu nga tan kilai namaste bid o nga tume nga istamitra jaga tan namaste Colonel Cross, Shana, Tan, Tume, Lai, Namaste Bid. Lai nga toko, Toson, nga nasa, nga Toson nasa tiba, nga ayaimu, Sale nga Tomigi Shemliai. Sale gara madido nga belaidave qui ponle o. Also, some of you don't speak Gurung, so it'll be easier if I speak in English. So it is a great honor and privilege, and I would like to particularly thank Tech and Anita Gurung for all their support in this. It's a great honor to be here talking to you, and completely amazing. If you had said to me 52 years ago, when I first went to the Gurungs, that I would be able to sit in my study here and talk to Gurungs all over the world by some device, I would have said you were completely mad. So what has happened is extraordinary, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to now talk to you all. And thank you for listening. I'm now going to give a small presentation, if it works. So I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. And I hope you can hear this or see this.
Yes, we can see again.
Okay. So this is about what the Gurungs mean to me, and therefore it is very quick, 20 minutes, but at the end I will give you some links so that you can see other things if you want to. This is, I am just giving you a fishing rod with which you can catch many, many, many other fish if you want to. So I come from Cambridge. This is my college in Cambridge, the most famous college perhaps in the world, King's College. And I show this, my room is down here, and I show this to show the contrast between the world I come from in the UK and what I went to over 50 years ago when I went to Tak. So most of you will know, of course, where the Gurungs are, and this is where Tak is. And when we arrived in 1968, Kathmandu was just a small town, much smaller than Pokhara is now. This is Swayambhanut, and you see no houses down below. It's not like that now, nor is Pokhara. This is just beside Mahendra Pool. And you know what it's like now in Pokhara, many of you. And this is what Pokhara was like then. There were only 5 taxis and about 4 hotels in the whole of Pokhara. And this is lakeside. Imagine if I had seen what was going to happen and bought the land here, I would now be a millionaire. This is my wife sitting beside the lake. So we set off up the Siklis Valley to the village of Tak. And Tak is right up here on the slope here, and you see how steep it was. I never expected it to be like that. And you can see the steepness if you look at the gradient of the steepest mountain in England, Scafell Pike, and then you look at the slope up from the river to Tak village, and it's steeper than anything in the steepest mountain in England. So it's pretty extraordinary that the Gurungs should live here. This is the village of Tak when I first arrived with my wife Jill here, and this is the house where we lived. And you see a typical Gurung village, not much change now when we last went back 3 years ago. This is the house in which we lived. This was IB Saab's house, and his mother lived in the house next door. And we spent 15 months in Nepal living in this little house. The first shock really was eating, because as you see, all the children crowded round. We didn't speak any Gurung, and we weren't used to cooking on the floor and on wood and with smoke all around us. So it was a tremendous shock to everything I'd ever encountered before in terms of privacy and ways of living. But we survived. And one of the most useful things I had taken was my guitar. When I went back there 20 years later, I discovered that they were still singing the songs which we had sung in the evenings using this little guitar. What I was doing was a PhD, a doctorate in anthropology, on particularly economy and the growth of population. And the conditions for doing this were not easy. This table, for example, took 4 months before I could get a table made in this village. And I sat upstairs here in the smoke, writing notes for my thesis. Now, anthropology is basically about living with the people and both participating, living as they live, and also observing what they are doing and observing yourself. And I particularly like this photograph because it shows my wife, Sarah, who came with me on my second trip in 1986. And she has got one of our friends teaching her how to weave. And you see the closeness, you see the involvement. All the barriers have gone. And here is one woman teaching another woman how to weave. What particularly struck me about the Gurungs, I wasn't studying religion, was, however, the amazing ritual and religious system. For example, this is the little book which Indra Bahadur and I wrote about, a guide to the Gurungs. And on the cover is the Gato Sheva dance. This dance has died out in Tak by the time I went again, and it's died out in many Gurung villages, but fortunately I've got quite a lot of films of it, which are on the internet. So the Gato was amazing. Even more amazing, when I later went back and understood it, was the dance which very few of you will have ever seen, called the Kusun Teba. And this is a wild dance done in the evening. This girl is in trance. This is in Yanjakot village. And this girl is in trance, and she's got a stick here. And if anyone says the word buffalo, she goes mad and beats everyone. So I'm not able to play the music for that because it might have a very disturbing effect on certain members of the audience. The most interesting thing, which Simon has very usefully described to you, are the rituals and myths, the Peda Luda. And here on my first visit, I am with the shamans watching a ritual. They are extraordinary. This is the famous one, the Moshi Tiba, after an unfortunate death. And I show you this just for a glimpse of something amazing, which I still can't understand. Here is Yajung Gurung doing the ritual. This is slide number 20. Slide number 21, which I showed to him, is this, a second later. And there's Yajung, and there is his god protecting him. There are ancestors coming to help him. And here are evil spirits, witches attacking him. This is what he told me. He said, this is what I see when I go into shamanic trance, but I never expected it to come out on a photograph. So amazing. You are in another world. I want to talk about the main thing about my work with the Gurungs, which is how I became involved with individual Gurungs as friends and family. One of my closest friends was Prem Bahadur Gurung here, who was a bit younger than me. So he was like a younger brother, and we spent a huge amount of time together, as brothers do. And then when I went back 30 years later, there he had come back from working in Kathmandu, and we renewed our friendship. His father, Ujay Singh Gurung, was a very learned Poju or shaman. Here he is with all his equipment. And from him, towards the end, I gathered many of the rituals and myths that Simon was talking about and just made very amateur notes on them. But I haven't yet done anything with all that valuable material. Another important helper was Brikaras Gurung, who helped me translate all the ancient financial documents, the land documents of the village. Without him, I couldn't have done that. Two little boys particularly had helped me. They were about 13 when I first went there. One of them was Komal Bahadur Gurung. And so I visited him in Bombay, where he was working. And then when he came back to Tak, here he is with me on a wonderful reunion. The most important contact, though, on my first visit was with Lieutenant Owen Singh Gurung here. He had been in the British Gurkhas, and he was an enormous support and help to me on my first visit. And his son here tragically died 2 or 3 years after this. And so I became adopted as his son, his older son. This was his younger son. So I became a member of this Gurung family in a way which was impossible in England. And in particular, my sisters here, and in particular, this sister, Dilmaya Gurung, featured importantly throughout the rest of my life. It had not been easy working there, but when my wife and I came to leave, it was the most difficult, almost the most difficult day in my life. I felt terribly sad. I was moving away from a total world which had given me great kindness and involvement. And here the villagers are saying goodbye as we walk out of the village, and I felt completely empty and lost, but fortunately was able to go back again. When I came back to England, I wrote up my PhD and then wrote my book on the Gurungs like this. And I continued to work on the Gurungs through the years, including with Sarah, my wife, translating Pinier's book and publishing it. We went back in 1986 and a couple of years later built a little house in the village, which is still there, in which we stayed in the courtyard of Dilmaya Gurung. And here occasionally I wore Gurung dress with my friends. The most important person with whom I started to work very closely 3 years after I went back was Dilmaya Gurung. And here she is. She was my younger sister, so I called her Baini, and she called me Agi. And I became closer to her than almost anyone in my life. She was an amazing woman. And also to her daughter, Prem Kumari here, who I started to film her and her relationship to her mother when Prem Kumari was about this age, about 2. Prem Kumari was growing up and she was a great assistant too. She's teaching Sarah here how to speak Gurung. And I became so close to her mother that when I asked her once whether she would wash my hair, because this would be absolutely impossible in 90% of human societies to ask a woman in another culture to wash your hair. But this shows the equality and confidence of Gurung women, that she was prepared and even to laugh about the fact that I didn't seem to have very much hair to wash. And the closeness was shown in 1994 when we were there for the Bai Tika, where, as you know, the women, a sister feeds her brother. And this is a very intimate gesture. And here Dilmaya is feeding me. So when she died the year later, I was more affected and upset by it than by any death in my life up to that time, including my father. This is the funeral ritual, the Pue Lava, for Dilmaya. And we were brothers and sisters, and so close. As some of you may know, the dead spirit goes into a sheep, and you comb the sheep with the Dilmaya's comb, which is what Sarah is doing here. So this was a real brother-sister relationship. And a couple of years later, her family put up this little memorial, and later put a much better and bigger one up on the road to the forest. Other Gurungs were enormously helpful. Badra Singh Gurung here, who knew the whole village, every house, every kinship relationship, every buffalo, everything. And he spent hours and hours telling us the inside history of the village. Another enormously important person was Indra Bahadur Gurung, who was my uncle and with whom I wrote that book, and who worked on many projects with us. Another non-Gurung friend over the years was Colonel John Cross, who is in his mid-90s now and still writing several books a year, one of the most incredible people I've met, and one of the greatest linguists in Asia. From very early on, I was filming. This was my first camera, and then with better cameras. And this has produced, I think, probably one of the best film archives of any society in the world. This is a tiny part of the films in the first visit. And since then, I've been to Tak another 19 times. And so I've got 50-year record in film of a mountain community, many hundreds of hours of film, in fact. And they are up on YouTube. If you go to the Ayabaya column thing on YouTube, I'll give you the references at the end. And you will find all the films there, and you can watch them. And they're watched by hundreds of thousands, including many Gurungs around the world. And also, if you want to get them downloaded, you can find them on the streaming media service. Again, I'll give you the reference at Cambridge. And there you can download them very easily and watch them in your own time. Indra Bahadur and I held a meeting of shamans, Poju and Claybri, and we suggested that they set up some institutions to save Gurung culture. And then IB designed this design for what is the Koimbo in Pokhara. I hope many of you have visited it, which has been copied to other parts of Nepal. And his work particularly, and some money I managed to raise as well, were behind the Tamu Pie Lusang. So this is one way in which I've tried to give something back for all the kindness and generosity of my Gurung hosts. Other younger Gurungs with whom I've worked, this is Shana or Bikash Gurung, who is Dilmaya's younger son. And ever since I first met him when he was just about 2 years old, we have been very close friends. And he works with us on various projects in Nepal and is our assistant. And he runs a trekking company, which I hope some of you will use, called Dilmaya Treks and Tours, which will take you up to Tak and other places with one of my chief friends in the village. If you want to learn about the Gurungs, there's no better way than going with Bikash Gurung. So on my website, www.alanmacfarlane.com, under projects and under publications, you'll find lots more of my work on the Gurungs. When I retired in 2009, one of the first things we did was to go back to Nepal. And here Sarah and I are on our return to the village. As you see, you can see how well we are and how happy we are to be back. And it has been a life-changing event being involved with the Gurungs. So if you want to learn more about our work and how we are trying to preserve Gurung culture through films and through writings and through other things like that, you can look at YouTube. If you search for Ayabaya Gurungs or go to that, you can take a photograph of this, or you can go to the streaming media service in Cambridge, and a lot of Gurungs, hundreds of Gurung films are there. You can find other things on my website or go to those addresses. So to stop there. So I haven't been told it's 3 minutes to go, but I'm sure it must be 3 minutes to go. So
yes.
Thank you.
Just on time again. Thank you so much.
So Chanle Yad O Nilai Amlid O Namaste Dhanyabad.
Thank you very much, Lele Gyasaji Orse, Professor Alan Macfarlane, for your thoughtful and moving presentation about how you view Gurungs and they mean to you. Your continuous love and dedication to our community for the last 5 decades is simply amazing and unbeatable. Thank you so much. Like for other speakers, now let me switch to Nepali to share summary of your presentation in short. यहाँले सुनिहाल्नुभयो प्रोफेसर आलन माकफर्लानले एकदमै राम्रोसँग तमु कुएमा उहाँले आफ्नो परिवारको परिचय दिनुभयो र यहाँहरूले बुझ्नुभयो पनि कति राम्रोसँग र उहाँको प्रस्तुतिमा उहाँले द गुरुङ्स एन्ड व्हाट डु दे मीन टु मी, गुरुङहरू र मेरो जीवनमा उनीहरूको के महत्त्व छ शीर्षकमा नै केन्द्रित रहेर उहाँले प्रस्तुति दिनुभयो। र सबैभन्दा अत्यन्त महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा उहाँले 52 वर्ष अगाडिका दुर्लभ तस्बिरहरू नेपालको काठमाडौँको थाकको पोखराको र उहाँको आफ्नो परिवार र उहाँलाई आफ्नो अध्ययन र अनुसन्धानमा सहयोग गर्ने सबै मित्रहरूको फोटो पनि हामीलाई उहाँले शेयर गर्नुभयो। यसैले नै यो हेर्दा नै हामीलाई थाहा हुन्छ कि उहाँ कति मात्र चाहिँ तमु सोसाइटी र तमुहरूसँग अट्याच्ड हुनुहुन्छ, हामीसँग आत्मीय हुनुहुन्छ। र उहाँले सुरुमै चाहिँ एउटा थाकको जुन हिमाल देखाएर उहाँले कति उक्लदा कति गाह्रो भयो भन्ने कुरा पनि शेयर गर्नुभयो, जुन चाहिँ युकेमा एकदमै अग्लो माउन्टेन भन्दा पनि अग्लो छ भनेर भन्नुभयो। र उहाँले 15 महिनासम्म अनुसन्धान गरेर पिएचडी गर्नुभएको कुरा पनि हामीले एकदमै राम्रोसँग बुझ्ने मौका पायौँ। र त्यो 15 महिनाको दौरानमा उहाँले आफूले बस्ने एउटा कुर्सी र टेबल बनाउनलाई पनि 4 महिना लागेको। त्यति बेला त्यो समय कस्तो सकसपूर्ण थियो र त्यो समयमा पनि उहाँले यसरी गुरुङ गाउँमा बसेर आफ्नो अध्ययन अनुसन्धान गर्नुभयो भन्ने कुरा हामीलाई एकदमै राम्रोसँग बुझाइदिनु भयो। सुरुका महिनाहरूमा कसरी समाजमा मिल्ने र सिक्ने भन्ने कुरामा उहाँले एकदमै त्यो जानकारी र गुरुङ समाजले कसरी उहाँलाई चाहिँ एकदमै सहयोग गर्यो भन्ने कुराहरू बताउनु भयो। र त्यसपछि उहाँ एकदमै आत्मीय र एकदम रूपमा सहभागी हुनुभयो र त्यसलाई उहाँले चाहिँ एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण हुँदो रहेछ यो चाहिँ मित्रता हैन, एउटा परिवार जस्तो भएर बस्नलाई भन्ने बारे पनि वर्णन गर्नुभयो। र उहाँले शेयर गर्नुभएको तस्बिरहरूमा जो दिलमाया उहाँले आफ्नो बहिनी बनाउनु भएको छ र उहाँको धर्म बहिनी र उहाँको परिवारसँग र त्यति बेलाका चाड पर्वमा उहाँहरूले भाग लिनु भएको र उहाँको मृत्यु हुँदा भइसकेपछि नि उहाँको पयमा उहाँ बेलायतबाट आएर त्यो पयमा सहभागी भएको कुरा पनि उहाँले हामीलाई शेयर गर्नुभयो, जुन कुरा हामीले देख्ने मौका पायौँ। र अरू कुरा पनि उहाँका आफ्ना बहिनीका परिवारहरू साथै त्यस क्षेत्रमा विविध खाले सहयोगहरू प्रदान गर्दै आउनु भएको पनि उहाँले हामीलाई जानकारी दिनुभयो। र अर्को एउटा महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा, नेपालमा सबैभन्दा लामो समयसम्म अटुट सम्बन्ध र लगातार अध्ययन गर्नुहुने विदेशी विद्वान हुनुहुन्छ उहाँका अन्य धेरै मित्रहरू लाई पनि उहाँले नाम लिनुभयो। लेफ्टेनेन्ट भुवन सिंह, कर्णेल जेपी क्रस, जो धेरै लामो समयपछि बेलायती मूलका नेपाली नागरिक बन्नुभएको छ, र आइबी गुरुङको उहाँले नाम लिनुभयो। र उहाँलाई सहयोग गर्ने गैर तमुको पनि उहाँले नाम लिनुभयो। र उहाँले यो गुरुङहरूका लागि के फिर्ता गर्न सके त अथवा के भयो त भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ मुख्य गरेर उहाँले 50 वर्षदेखि विविध खाले तमु समाजसँग सम्बन्धित भिडियोहरू, किताब तथा रचनाहरू र पोखरा स्थित वैभव निर्माणमा उहाँको सहयोग र थुप्रै युवाहरूसँग पनि उहाँले सहकार्य गर्नुभएको कुरा पनि उल्लेख गर्नुभयो। र अन्तमा उहाँले यी सबका बारेमा वेबसाइट र लिङ्कहरूलाई पनि हामी माझ उहाँले शेयर गर्नुभयो र जहाँ उहाँले खिचेका भिडियोहरू, उहाँका लेखहरू, रचनाहरू सबै समावेश भएका छन्, जुनलाई हामीले त्यसमा चाहिँ ब्राउज गरेर हेर्न सक्छौँ। र हामी आशा गर्छौँ हाम्रो युवा पुस्ताले ती सबै स्रोतहरूलाई हामी तमुहरूको संस्कार र संस्कृति संरक्षणका लागि उपयोगमा ल्याउनुहुनेछ भनेर हामी यो आशा गर्न सक्छौँ।